Hello, and welcome back to the Beyond Your Wildest Genes podcast. My name is Dr. Noah DeCoyer, and I am your co-host. Today our guest is Dr. Matthew Mix. Dr. Matthew was born and raised in New Orleans, Louisiana. He graduated from Brother Martin, a prestigious all-boys Catholic high school, in 1995. After completing his undergraduate studies at the University of Southern Mississippi, he moved to Dallas to pursue his dream of becoming a chiropractor. He received his doctorate of chiropractic from Parker College of Chiropractic in 2002. Dr. Matthew established a thriving family office just southeast of New Orleans in the small town of Belle Chasse, Louisiana. The office was designed to be patient-centered with the focus solely on the patient's need for a better nerve system. The office was open for 3 years until a natural disaster had other plans for the area. After spending a year in Austin, Dr. Matthew and his wife, Dr. Michelle, decided that they wanted to open another chiropractic clinic in a family-oriented community. Bastrop was the perfect fit. It just opened in March of 2007. In 2010, Michelle and Matthew were blessed to welcome a beautiful baby boy into this world. Mason is the perfect addition to the loving family and home in Bastrop, Texas. In 2015, Dr. Matthew earned a prestigious designation, his ACP, the Academy of Chiropractic Philosophers. Is a graduate program in which students dive deep into topics pertaining to health in today's society. A sample of these topics include vitalism versus mechanism, science and philosophy, and adaptability. The students are required to submit and defend a thesis for course completion. There are approximately 200 graduates across the globe bearing this designation. Wow, that's a mouthful. How are you, Dr. Matthew?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Dr. Noah.
Full disclosure, Matt is one of my closest friends, my brother in chiropractic, and one of my accountability partners for the last 4 years. Everything good, Matthew?
Yes, sir. Doing very well. Thank you. Good to hear your voice.
Yeah, yours as well. So let's just dive right in. When we talk about your childhood, with regards to your health and the way health was practiced in your home, what insight could you give us?
I think my childhood was a typical 1980s childhood. It was one of, you didn't really think too deep about health. My mom, I guess, was the health nut in our family, and then she took vitamins. It was just more of you ate what tasted good. And growing up in New Orleans, that was easy to do. Everything tasted good. So it was definitely the lifestyle was one of just what is good today, and not necessarily always thinking about what that's gonna lead down the road necessarily. So I guess that's the overall reach that I had in thinking about my health. Everyone kind of in my immediate family thought my mom was a little bit over the top. She would take vitamins and looked more into health because my sister had some health challenges at the time, and so I think that drove her to look for answers, outside of the conventional wisdom of the day. And so she started really me down that path of thinking about my health decisions more than just beyond what sounds like it's going to be a good idea for today.
So were there other instances growing up other than your mother taking vitamins and your sister's health challenges to switch your health paradigm?
Not that I can think of, not immediately. Now, when I turned 15, I was in a really bad vehicle accident, and I totaled my dad's Suburban. At that time, I was you could get a driver's license at 15, so
Wait, let's stop it. You were driving at 15.
I was, yeah. Well, New Orleans is a little backwards sometimes. So, yeah, we could drive at 15 and it was legal to drink at 18. So,
Wow, okay.
so I was driving my dad's Suburban. It was about 10:30 at night, and making a run for the family. And believe it or not, my dad, we had people come over, and my dad said, "Hey, we need something for the guests. Go get some donuts." So there's your so there's your great health experience at a young age. So I was going to the donut shop, which is the only thing that's usually open at 10:30, and in that I could get into at that age. So I was headed that way, and a drunk driver pulled out in front of me, and we just collided, and the Suburban I was in was completely totaled. His car was obviously totaled. I blacked out a little bit, and so that was really, I think, when everything changed for me. I didn't see myself as indestructible anymore at that moment, and I felt that something needed to change. My health just took a turn, and I had allergy issues prior to that. They got much worse after the accident, as well as I was in severe pain from the accident. I did have my seatbelt on, and but my body was twisted around the steering wheel pretty good, no airbags, and so it made an impact on my health big time. So I initially, at that moment, my parents were actually already under chiropractic care. My sister was going because of her health challenges. My mom had had prior accidents, and my dad used to play football in college. So everyone was under chiropractic care except for me. And at that point, I started care, and that's when I realized there was more to that. I needed to pay more attention to my health, I guess is the best way to describe it. And so that to me was, I guess, my wake-up call at that moment.
That first visit to your first chiropractor, was it solely for the car accident injuries, or did he give you any insight on what chiropractic could mean to your health potential?
He did not. It was very much, hey, we're going to get you out of discomfort, and it was all about the vehicle accident. Now, as I started receiving care, I noticed other health stuff getting better, I guess you could say. I noticed my allergies were getting better. I noticed my headaches were getting better, which I was having well before the accident. And I was your typical take a Tylenol type of kid, especially as a teenager. Didn't think anything of it. And these things started to get better, and as I inquired about it to him, he, helped me understand, okay, this is, why this area that we're taking care of also, has something to do with these parts of your bodies too. So that may be why some of these other symptoms are starting to change as well. So it was more, I guess, of me noticing it and bringing it up to him. I had no idea that that was going to occur, or that I was going to notice any change other than I hope my back had felt better after the course of treatment that he would prescribe me.
Matthew, I had a similar situation. I wasn't in a car accident, but my mother went to the chiropractor because she had low back pain, and then she decided to bring me, and he told me what chiropractic was, what chiropractic is, that health comes from above down, inside and out, and that if your nervous system was functioning at its peak, you were going to be a healthier person. And I, like you, after my first adjustment, I never got strep throat again. I never got ear infections again. I didn't have to take that pink bubblegum tasting antibiotic that I was taking 3 or 4 times a year. So that's a very common theme for people, that theme of going to a chiropractor for one thing and noticing other health indicators improving. Could you explain that phenomenon a little bit more?
Yeah, you alluded to it with the above down, inside out paradigm, I guess you could call it. And for us, it's, the way that we explain it to patients is that there's one master control system of the body, and it's your nerve system. It's in control of every cell, tissue, and organ in your body. And in order for the impulses that travel between your brain and your body to control the organs that it's feeding, in order for that to work properly, you have to have no interference to it. And so when the chiropractor finds interference to that precious, delicate system and removes that interference, patients notice the results of those. And the one thing that it's always amazed me is, what does the patient not notice that's changing? And, back then there really weren't systems that measured it, but as you know, today there's plenty of systems that we can use to measure what the patient doesn't notice, which I think is pretty cool. And I hope, and I'm sure that we'll see that continue to change and add on to where we can measure what's changing within someone before they even notice it on the outside, which I think is pretty cool.
So, great point. So, in a real simple way, explain the technology that you use, because I know what you use, what we use in our office, and what thousands of other chiropractors use to get objective criteria on how well your body's functioning and how well it can function and the improvement that it makes through the course of care.
Well, there's a few different technologies we use. The primary one that I feel like if I were to pick, and what do I use on my family, for instance, the most important in myself, I would say is we use one that I like above all, which is the heart rate variability. It measures an individual's adaptation to stress. And you mentioned in my bio about adaptability in the recent course that I took. Adaptability means you cannot change the stresses in your environment as often as you can your response to it. And that's what this technology checks. Heart rate variability measures how well you adapt to the stresses in your environment. And by stress, I don't just mean emotional stress, but chemical stresses, physical stresses of the past, all these stresses that have built up over your lifetime, and other stresses that most people don't even think about, such as radiation, things that we really have little control over. How have these stresses over your lifetime affected your body's ability to adapt, and how have you adapted to them? And so when we measure that and we see a change over time for the positive, then we know that the patient's going to feel a difference as well. And even if they don't feel the difference or notice the difference right away, we can feel comfortable to know that we are positively affecting that individual. So I'd say that that's probably my favorite test that I measure on patients. It's also, from what I've seen, it's the most accurate test that can be taken. We also do thermography, which has been around for ages. It's technology-wise, it's gotten better and better and more user-friendly. In the computer ages, it's gotten better and better. And then we also use surface EMG, which measures electrical impulses right at the level of the spine as the nervous system controls the postural muscles that are holding your spine in place. When you have a subluxation, one of these three areas or multiple will be affected. And so if we can correct that subluxation, see that we're doing it in the best way possible, then we know that we're making a measurable change on that individual. And if we're not seeing the changes on those tests, then we can change the way that we're maybe assessing or treating that patient to get a better change on that test. So it truly gives you the checks and balances you need.
Since you mentioned it, let's talk about it. Subluxation. Go.
Yeah, a subluxation is the inability for your nerve system, the impulses within your nerve system to work as well as they should. It's that simple. It's a disconnection between your brain and your body. And wherever your subluxation is, has a myriad of effects to wherever that nervous system controls in that area. And it's not always just localized. So you can have a subluxation in your neck affect your digestive system. So the subluxation, I feel, when it's at its worst, is affecting your immune system. And I've said this multiple times, is that in my office, and my patients know it because I say it all the time, I beat it down because I want people to understand that I feel that the greatest detriment to mankind is a lower immune system. And when you have a subluxation, your immune system, if your immune system is affected, and most of the time it is, it really affects your quality of life. And so we look at where's your subluxation, where's that interference to your nerve system, and then we adjust the spine to correct that interference to the nerve system.
So subluxations are found in a person's spine, correct?
Yes.
And the chiropractor uses the terminology or uses a chiropractic adjustment to correct or to reduce that subluxation.
Exactly. The chiropractor's job is to figure out, and that's really, my job is so simple. I find and we call it an analyze. So we're analyzing the spine to find and correct the subluxation. That is our job. So when we find the area where the interference is to that nerve system, we apply a gentle adjustment to that area to remove the amount of interference to the nervous system, thereby reducing the subluxation. Sometimes it takes time. Sometimes one adjustment is all that's needed for the nerve system to fully function at 100%. There's a lot of factors that go into that. And obviously, the one factor that always goes into how much time is age. How long has the subluxation been there, and how old is the individual? And so the testing allows us to answer those questions. And that's one of the reasons, too, why we try to help as young as possible. Because the earlier we find a subluxation, the quicker we can control it.
So pediatric chiropractic is a large part of your practice?
It is. It is. I'd say we're probably, maybe 40% under the age of 12 right now. And so if you can find and correct that subluxation before there's any symptoms that show up in that individual and that child, imagine the start of their life having no interference to their nervous system, trying to express what that child needs to be later in life. To me, it's the greatest gift I guess I can give my son, is that he started his life from day one subluxation free, as I know your kids have too. And to me, that's just that I wish I had that. Now, I got my first adjustment at 15, and that's pretty good. But to think that when the brain is developing and when the body is developing and the digestive system and all these important things that guide us through life and that keep us healthy and living life abundantly are still growing, and the nervous system is able to function without fail 100% at that time, I think that's a pretty huge impact you can have on that individual's life.
I say very similar things often. I say, after giving your family love, the chiropractic adjustment's got to come next to create the healthiest possible you.
Agreed.
And just swinging back to the technology, once you make the adjustment, you can use the technology to make sure that the correction you made was the proper correction and that person is getting healthier.
Absolutely, regardless of symptoms. I mean, we've found that a person comes in with a list of symptoms. We put them under a treatment plan. We adjust them. We recheck them. At that time, their symptoms have almost completely resolved. We look at the computer scans, and the results of the tests are not as good as we want. So we change the treatment plan, change the way that we're adjusting, and now the patient's even noticing better results than they ever dreamed of. So regardless of what they feel and what they notice, we're always reassessing to make sure that the subluxation is not present, or that we're constantly reducing it and seeing better nerve flow along the whole process of care in the office.
Matthew, I know you are a student of chiropractic history. Explain where the word subluxation came so people can get a better understanding of what that is. Because if you were to ask most people, they wouldn't know what a subluxation is, but they might know what a pinched nerve is. And in many cases, a pinched nerve could be considered a subluxation. And that's what a lot of people think of chiropractic, but get a little bit down and dirtier with the word subluxation.
Yeah, subluxation was coined years ago, and it was coined, and if you break it down, the actual term, sub means less, and luxation is less than a dislocation. So you're talking about a position of a spine or two bones on top of each other that isn't in the best position possible, simply put. So it's not dislocated. but it's in a position that is not best for nerve function. That's what a subluxation is. It was later found, interesting enough, that it doesn't take a lot of pressure on the nerve. So if there is pressure on the nerve, it only takes the weight of a dime to decrease that nerve by 60%. Now that's been found with science years later. But initially, that's what the term subluxation was, pressure on the nerve. We found that a subluxation can be present, not just a pinched nerve. So you can have a stretch on the nervous system, as I'm sure you've seen in your office as well, where you have, and you take an x-ray of someone and you look at the position of their spine, and their spinal cord is stretched and distorted because of the subluxation pattern that's within their body. So that's what a subluxation is. That's what its original idea was, is that it was a pinched nerve. Later we found that you can have a subluxation, not necessarily have a pinched nerve. And the problem with calling it a pinched nerve, I think, is that it implies that, it's a lot of pressure on that nerve at that point. It doesn't have to be. It can be a simple positional change that just agitates the whole diameter where that nerve exits, and that would simply cause a subluxation.
In fact, I believe a stretching of a nerve is even more detrimental than a compression on a nerve. Is that correct?
It is. It is, absolutely. And so I from what I've seen, most of the time when people come in with a subluxation, it's a stretch on the nerve. And more importantly, if we're going to get detailed and specific on it, if it's a part of the spine that connects to the nervous system itself that's out of position, it stretches the nervous system at that point too. So in other words, you have the spinal cord that travels down from the brain, and as it enters the spine, it's suspended at certain points. And so there's certain points in the spine that suspend that cord. When those bones get out of position, it pulls the spinal cord. And so that causes a stretch on the nerve and causes subluxation. That's why I believe subluxations are commonly found in a handful of areas in the spine. Now, there are people that have subluxations in areas beyond where those nerves are actually attached to the spine through those ligaments. However, the ones that are, the subluxations that are present in those areas where the ligaments are attached to the spinal cord itself and suspend the cord in the center of the canal, those areas are much more important because they affect the nervous system to such huge degrees. So that's why I think the stretch causes more aggravation of the nerve system. I believe science has showed that in the last few years as well.
I agree totally. Now, when I look at subluxation, it's definitely less than a dislocation, but I also look at it as sub, meaning below, and lux, meaning light. So it means below the light. So I like to visualize subluxation as your brain creates energy, electricity, or light that travels down your spinal cord to the rest of your body. And if one of those bones are subluxated or misaligned, that stops that light from flowing properly or completely to wherever it needs to go to create the healthiest you.
That makes a lot of sense. And the energy is, energy is light, and you're talking about how well can the nervous system function? How do those messages communicate? And it's important for us to make this distinguishment that we don't know what those messages necessarily should be and are. We're just removing interference to that communication. Does that do you agree with me on that one?
Absolutely, without a doubt. Our job is to remove the subluxation and let the body's innate ability to do what it needs to do to create its healthiest possible state.
Right. And the minute that I think an individual or a community starts to believe that they know what those messages need to be, that's when you get the onset of a different mentality than what you and I are talking about. Meaning, if I think individual A, we'll call him, if I think his blood pressure is supposed to be 120/80 and it's not, then I'm going to do things to lower that blood pressure, right? And so that's me putting my thoughts on where that blood pressure needs to be, instead of just saying, hey, your blood pressure is high. Let's see if your nervous system is working as good as it should be. Remove the interference and then monitor what happens with the blood pressure on top of that.
Beautifully said. The greatest doctor is within us at all times.
Yes.
Now, where do you see healthcare going today for the general public, Matthew?
Well, if you look at the past, it was all about treatment diseases. And although obviously there is a huge need for treating diseases, I think you and I would both agree, and I don't know many that wouldn't agree, that it's so much easier, cheaper, and more fun for the individual to practice prevention. And so with that, you now see even early detection of cancers. For instance, we're in Cancer Awareness Month, right? And so that's all over my town, is let's detect cancer earlier. Hey, if I have cancer, I want to detect it early. But what's more important to me is let's prevent cancers in the first place. And so I see the medical profession moving closer to that, and I know the holistic profession's been there. So I see no reason why that trend won't continue to say, hey, what's better than early detection? How about prevention? How about taking care of a body that is at ease before it gets to an uneased state, before disease symptoms are even close to occurring? And so that's where I see healthcare going today. I think that's where it needs to go. We have a healthcare crisis in the United States right now with regards to finances and the healthcare industry. No matter what your political affiliation is, I think we can all agree that what we're doing isn't working. And so the way to fix that isn't to find cheaper ways or to guarantee insurance. In my estimation, it's to truly practice prevention. And if we can do that, then a lot of our financial states in our country will really be a thing of the past, at least when it comes to healthcare. I just did a workshop last night, and one of the stats that we mentioned was that 75% of healthcare costs today are because of obesity. 75%. And so if we have all these costs associated with something that can be easily prevented, why aren't we focusing on that yet? I don't know that answer, but I do know that that's where healthcare needs to go.
Without a doubt. So, your thoughts on creating a healthier generation?
I think it starts with the intellect of what healthcare is. How do you take care of your health from day one in the school? The school that my son goes to, for instance, I mean, they haven't weeded out gym time and PE time. They're practicing these healthy concepts, albeit there's always room for improvement. But I think that's how we start a healthier generation. One, we get them practicing health concepts that start with, why am I eating healthy today? And these are the conversations we have around our dinner table, right? Because my son comes home and his buddy at lunchtime maybe had, a fast food meal, and he says, why aren't we eating this way? And it starts with that conversation with your kids that we eat this way because we want to be healthy. Period. It's that simple. And I can't speak to their family. I can only assume that they don't know the detrimental effects of participating in those health style choices right now, what it would have on their children. Because I don't know any family that would make decisions that are poor for their kids just because it's easy to make. I think there's that educational loss when it comes to health. And so for me, I think it starts with that at the table with your kids. First, you need to sit down and have a meal. But in that meal, I hope the conversations are like that, is that we're eating this because it's what's going to create a healthy life for us. And it's what's going to feed our bodies. It's what's going to give us the energy. It's not just because it tastes good or that it looks good or that it was cheap and easy to pick up at the local fast food establishment.
Or we exercise because it's the right thing to do. Or we grow a garden because our organic produce is better than any produce we can get anywhere. Or we go to the chiropractor because getting our spines checked and adjusted helps create the healthiest me possible, right?
Absolutely. When we talk about, healthier children, have you seen how many of them are stuck to their iPads and phones these days? I mean, I sound like an old man saying that, but it's one of those things. We limit how much screen time our child has, and why can't I play on the iPad? Because there's an outside that wants to be played with, and so we go outside and we have we're constantly making sure that the TV just isn't on the weekend, and it's not on before he goes to school, and it's not on right when he gets home. That if we put on the television, it's because we've lived our day really well, and it's time to watch something, hopefully, that inspires us. And for us, that would be sports and that sort of thing. But we're making those decisions. So yeah, not just food, but across the board.
Well said. Now, Dr. Matthew, for someone who lives in the Bastrop area, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, our website, justchiro.com, CHIRO. That's really the best way to get in touch with us. You can check out other things that we're doing, read a little bit more about what our office is participating in, and even request an appointment right there on our website.
And for someone looking for a subluxation-based, wellness-oriented chiropractor outside the Bastrop area, what is a trusted source or a few trusted sources that people can use?
I really we talked about the technology. I really like the Find a Doctor through CLA's website. And because chiropractors that are measuring the nerve system, I feel like are going to be the best chiropractors to really know that they're correcting your subluxation and to be on top of, hey, that you're not just taking their word for it, they're truly measuring it and then showing you the results. So that's where I send patients is findagreatchiro.com. Is that the website?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, see, do you agree with me? This is what I tell my patients. If I can't give someone a direct website or a direct referral, I tell my patients to find a chiropractor that sees children.
Yeah, I think, you know what, that's a great litmus test. If you had just one question to ask, what does this chiropractor see children? I think that's great.
Because if that chiropractor is seeing children, then they're focused on the nervous system, human potential, the spine, and creating a healthier community.
Right. 90% of the children that you see don't have a myriad of symptoms. So that means the chiropractor is truly looking for the subluxation and finding out how to correct it before those processes take place. And so, yeah, I agree. I think that's a great test to find a good chiropractor in your area.
Well, Dr. Matthew, we truly appreciate your time. Do you have any last words for us?
No, I just I've always got last words. I think to sum up everything we've talked about in one easy way is, to really take your healthcare seriously, in that you think about it purposefully. My family, when we sit around at our dinner table, we have certain things that we talk about, and meaning that we don't just show up to dinner and it just happens, and one person's on the phone. And when we show up to dinner, I have a list of things that I'm purposefully there to talk about. And so when we make that decision when it comes to our health, I think if people thought about it more from a purposeful moment of of, is this going to create a healthier situation within my body, or is this just something I'm doing because it's easy to do? I think overall we'll have a healthier community and we'll have a healthier generation down the road. So if I could leave with that, I think that would be the best thought process any decision is made when it comes to health. Put it through that funnel, I guess you could say.
Beautiful and well said. Thank you very much, Dr. Matt. My name is Dr. Noah DeCoyer, your co-host, and you are listening to the Beyond Your Wildest Genes podcast. If you like what you heard today, please share this with your friends and family and encourage them to subscribe on iTunes. Thank you, and as my oldest son Hayden says, be awesome and never unawesome.